Howdy ho, America and points beyond. Who has power and what are they doing with it? Politics is not a natural act.
That's right.
That's right.
I must admit, I never heard that one from you, gentlemen.
There's so many feisty fighters against the greedheads and boneheads. So grab a libation, join the conversation. It's the personal side of politics, and it is surprisingly tasty. And howdy ho again. We're back with the Hightower Load Down Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe, otherwise known as my kitchen. Here at the old round table, and we got a hot one for you tonight because to start with, it's 103 degrees even as we speak here in Austin, Texas. But we're going way beyond Austin. We're going to the cool of Boulder, Colorado, and then on out to Los Angeles with a couple of terrific guests, and then to you, wherever you are, and we hope you're staying cool. But maybe we're talking about the hottest topic there is tonight, hottest topic of our time, whether American democracy, or maybe wither American democracy. What is it? What do you think? How are we doing democracy-wise? We're going to talk about it, so pull up a chair here at the old round table, pop a libation of your own. I've got my Boombox beer, local Texas beer, Boombox, because we're going to have a booming sort of topic here tonight. And join our conversation. Deanna is always right there with you. Hello, Deanna. Deanna's got her libation handy. She doesn't go too far without it.
Oh my gosh, no. I've moved into summer mode. I'm now on wine spritzers.
Oh.
Because I am a middle-aged white woman. So true to form, I've got wine spritzers.
It looks a little like Pepto-Bismol.
No, they're actually, they're real wine and they're delicious. Pampalon. Okay.
Oh, all right. Okay. I'm game for it all. So join us here. Pull up your own libation and your chair here because we're going to talk about the rise of right-wing extremism into the mainstream of American politics. And I don't mean extremism. I mean extremely extremism. Not just a matter of, the handful of right-wing nutballs who are out for a PR cruise. Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert out of Colorado, Louis Gohmert from right here in East Texas, Elise Stefanik up in upstate New York. But we're talking now about an entire political party. The GOP itself, its establishment, is no longer just winking at the kookism, ranging from the new Confederates to the QAnon crowd and etc. But we're talking about the governors, the members of Congress and senators. We're talking about the party establishment of state party chairs and even local party chairs. We're talking about the whole system has now embraced the nutballism to become the party of extremism, hoping to mainstream it, to put it into American politics at the center. And so that is our question tonight: is whether the mainstream of American politics can go so extreme as to possibly even be called fascism. That's the F word. We rarely use it. But there it is. We've got to at least address it. And whatever you want to call it, they are trying to drag us into the maelstrom of their political disaster. And that means we cannot wait until December of 2024 after the presidential election. And I realize we haven't even done the midterm elections this November yet. And so some of you say, oh, Hightower, please don't make us talk about the presidential election now. But yes, we must, because we're being forced to, because America is under siege by people of right-wing political persuasion, some very, very far right-wing, who want to drag us into that extremist anti-democracy power call that they are trying to put forward. So we're going to visit about that tonight, and we've got a couple of dynamite people to help us do that. Whenever you've got to talk about something heavy like this, you need to go to humor. And so we've got Baratunde Thurston with us, a terrific humor advocate who's got a podcast called How to Citizen. Very important point. And a new PBS show coming up called American Outdoors. We will be asking you, Baratunde, what that is all about. And then also, we've got a person who has been on top of the political developments in this country for a long, long time, from a bit of a foreign perspective too, because she is German by birth, but has been here a long, long time, and is the chief executive of Mother Jones magazine. And she is Monika Bauerlein. Bauerlein, as I told them, so you have to say it from the diaphragm. Bauerlein. All right. Anyway, we welcome you, Monika, and Baratunde. Thank you so much for being with us here this evening.
Thank you so much for having us, Jim. And I really appreciate you taking my fake advice on how to say Monika's name.
Yeah, right.
If you say something with confidence, people
I'm saying it that way.
Exactly. I take it as truth. You if it comes from your mouth and your heart, it must be true. So
I got to be careful. That's how I become a fascist leader, by accident.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we have to be careful. All right. So Monika, let us start with you. The F word is explosive. And maybe too explosive. If we don't want to say fascism, what should we be saying? What about this extremism? First of all, I guess we should say, are you seeing the same thing I am, that this is extant in America now?
I really struggle with that, Jim, because, when I did grow up in Germany, it was the, 70s and 80s. And so there were all these people, all the adults around me remembered, actual fascists on every corner. And so I've always been really careful not to throw the word around. And I definitely never thought that being, steeped in that history was ever going to be relevant to me, living in this country at this time. Right. And I was a little impatient with people, kind of calling people Nazis and fascists, because they didn't like them. But I think right now we are seeing people at least embracing what is plain and simple fascist thought. Like, there are people marching and, shouting Nazi slogans in, American cities, and there are politicians who enable them. And so, you can't really hold back at that point.
And politicians who are shouting some of the same slogans, which is the big change. We've always had, Joe McCarthy and, people throughout our history who have been right-wing extremists. It wasn't that long ago here in Texas that we thought the world had ended because of George W. Bush. And in fact, the late great political thinker and writer and humorist Molly Ivins tried to warn America about George W. Bush when he was governor of our state with his frat boy corporate orientation. And yet there he was, elected president of the United States. And then suddenly a lot of progressives were saying, oh, my gosh, we didn't realize, how right wing he was. And here came Dick Cheney and the whole Ashcroft and that whole menagerie of characters. And Molly said with a deep sigh, the next time I tell you someone from Texas should not be president, please listen. And so we're here tonight to address that very question as a part of our overall conversation. But it's not just a few people anymore, is my point, Monika. It is an entire party has decided to advance this as their political mainstream.
Right. And, can we pause, while you're on Bush and Cheney, can we pause for a moment on the fact that we now have Liz Cheney,
Hello.
being a heroine for democracy? And I say that without irony.
It's amazing and impressive.
And exactly. I mean, I do look for, I scratch and claw for things to, to hold on to for hope. And one of them is that for a lot of people, there does come a line that they can't cross. And, that's really interesting to see on display with Liz Cheney and all these, I'm sure we'll talk about these hearings, but the fact that there is one conservative Republican witness after the other who is just saying, I can go no further with this, which is what happens when you're confronting authoritarians and, anti-democratic forces and fascists, is you have to make there comes a point where you're making a choice.
Yes. And at least authoritarian is their mode. And we will talk a little bit more about that. You mentioned the hearings, the hearings about the January 6th insurrection. And I thought yesterday's testimony was particularly powerful because of, primarily because of the lady from Georgia, am I right?
Ruby Freeman and Shay,
right.
They were just extraordinary. Talk about heroes.
To have the President of the United States call out your mother by name 18 times out of complete ignorance and arrogance, well, there you go. That is a form of authoritarianism right there. The big lie. But those hearings, as important as they are, as revealing as they are, there's a tendency, and Baratunde, let me ask you this. There's a tendency by the media particularly to say, what is going to be the impact of this on the midterm elections? Will this affect Democratic senatorial races? Will they lose? Will Republicans win? Isn't there a bigger issue at stake than that?
Yeah, there is. And thank you. I am both in the show and watching the show and commenting on the YouTube of the show that I'm in and on. So Tamale Ivins.
You have real talent.
You're a YouTube commenter.
I was a commenter first.
Molly. If we're toasting Molly,
everybody
Molly was my idol.
Absolutely.
Mine too.
For Molly.
She
Go
lived,
ahead, Baratunde.
She lived She lived just
Sorry,
a few
Hightower.
blocks from here. So anyway,
that's cool.
Yeah, we were buddies.
Too.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, she gave a lot of us a lot of hope and reminded us that not all Texans are Bushes.
Right.
And it can be very easy to think that not all Republicans are authoritarians.
Very true.
And there's something that I'm seeing in the parts of the hearings that I'm letting myself see because I've been so over consuming the toxicity of media about the great decline of a great nation. It's a bit exhausting sometimes. I need a little breather. And it's supposed to be summer. But I will say what y'all were just talking about with this litany of conservatives saying not for me. This is my line. Count me out. And meaning it. Unlike certain Lindsey Graham, who has said those words and then counted himself right back in.
What about
so? It just reminds me that there is a very small group here holding all of us hostage, and there is a moderately sized group willing to let them, and there's a majority that hasn't quite gotten organized enough to stop them. But the whole country isn't authoritarian. The whole country isn't Nazis. Even the whole Republican Party. And when you look at gun policy stuff and you recognize the extremism, the limited size of those holding these extremist views that like everybody should have to carry a loaded gun at all times, even if they're allergic to metal. Like I think that's the NRA position on this at this point. It's really far-fetched and really ridiculous, but they've created enough of a system of consequences and bullying and conformity that most are not strong enough or brave enough to speak the truth that they know. Most people know Trump was a bullshit artist, right? But they couldn't say it because there's profit in staying quiet about it. So it's been refreshing out of these hearings from Cheney on down to be reminded that there are people with whom I can have robust tax policy disagreements, immigration reform disagreements, and still believe in the freedom to vote and count those votes, and believe that those disagreements that we have should be aired out in debate and quorums and lobbying and all the other tools that we have. Though lobbying is legalized bribery, I'd like to do away with that. But
Yes.
other versions of democracy that we have to battle safely as opposed to violently, which has been endorsed. So that's my little take on the hearing so far. And you asked me a question, I forgot it, but I wanted to say that, and I'm willing to answer your question if you just ask me one more time.
Yeah.
I just want to say, Baratunde, that
Yeah.
I think that is so important that, authoritarians are authoritarians because they can't win democratically. They don't have majorities.
Right.
When you can actually get a majority on your side, you don't need authoritarianism.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's, it always, I've thought this before and maybe said in other forums, but I don't think you can say it enough. It's a bit ironic to me that the party that's going this way toward cheating is the party that espouses so much belief in like market, and the free markets and the free flowing power of ideas. And it's like, if you believe in free markets and true capitalism, then just compete.
Personal responsibility too.
Yeah, just compete. Just put your candidate up against another candidate. Let's see what happens. But you want to cheat before you compete. Yeah. And you want to go changing the borders on folks. And you want to go throwing voters out off the rolls. And you want to make people reapply who are already citizens, essentially, because you lack faith in your own product. You lack faith in yourself so much. And I'm like, Republicans, if Republicans believed in themselves more, they wouldn't need to bully and threaten and cheat and cajole the rest of us into following them. They could just say what they want to do. We could say what we want to do and let the people decide. That's the basic idea here. But they're so down on themselves. They so lack faith in their own set of values that they don't want to put the values up.
They used to have it. They used to have a set of values that they espouse, like small government, for example.
Now it's just naked power, I think, and it's.
I've never thought about the Republicans as having actually just really low self-esteem. They know that their ideas can't win, so they have to resort to bullying. I did want to give some shout outs. We put some of the comments up on the screen. Want to let people know, first of all, what are your questions for Hightower and our guests tonight? I am here to channel your questions to them. And we have, once again, such an amazing geographic diversity in our audience tonight. I haven't even gotten through everybody, but I've got Colorado, we got South Korea. Ron, what up again? You're drinking your coffee. Got you. We got Florida, Missouri, Paris. It's late. Paris.
Bon nuit.
And as always, Southeast Ohio, Appalachia, that's my people. So yes, let us know if you have any questions or comments, or whatever. Put them in the comments and I will get them up on the screen. All right, I'm gonna go away again.
Well, good for you. Thank you for that input. And yes, indeed, call in, because Deanna is right there, to the weight person of the Chat and Chew roundtable, to bring your questions and comments and insights, humor, if you got any, bring that to the table as well. And I would just shift a little bit into the fact that that there's this new surge of mainstreaming the extremism within the Republican Party is at such a level that it can't be denied as just it's just politics. But when Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, a governor who knows nothing about governing, by the way, kind of odd, nonetheless, that he puts forward some of the most bizarre thoughts, yet he wants to be your president. He pushed through, as most people know now, a horrific anti-abortion piece of legislation here in our state that includes you get to have the baby of the person who raped you. Indeed, you must have that baby. But Abbott explained that won't be a problem because he's going to go onto the streets of Texas and arrest all the rapists before they rape. Interesting concept. That is what I mean by extremism. And this is a guy who is trying to, he personally was not available to serve in the U.S. military when his young time came in his teens and 20s. But he has become Mr. Macho Military Man as governor, policing the border. That would be the U.S.-Mexican border. Terrorizing people who are already terrorized and in dire strait. That's one thing I would say about these Republican extremists, is that they are just mean people to people that they consider less than them, primarily the poor, for example, or immigrants, and so they're going at them in horrific ways. And Abbott, bless his soul, even tried to show up Joe Biden. He gathered up a bunch of migrants coming across the Texas border, put them on buses, literally paid for by Texas taxpayers. We put these migrant refugees really on buses and shipped them to Washington, D.C. because Abbott thought it would just be funny as hell to dump these migrants on the White House lawn and let Joe take that, Joe. But it turns out that most of these migrants were trying to get to the East Coast anyway, so it became a free ride, paid for by Texas taxpayers to go where they wanted to be. But that is the level. I mean, this guy can't even do wrong right.
Or maybe he can, right?
Yeah, well,
maybe he did a good deed by mistake.
I
Maybe
assure
that's
you,
the only way he knows how.
I assure you, he will keep trying
Yeah.
to do roll right. And again, back to Molly's line: don't let anybody become president who is from Texas, unless I tell you it's okay. This is not okay. But he's not the only one. We've got Ron DeSantis out of Florida. These are the two leading Republicans, short of Trump, that might be at the present are leading the polls and et cetera to be the Republican nominee for president. And this is they're in sort of a presidential cook-off to see which one can be the weirdest, trying to get this constituency of far right-wing nutballs, which, and this I want to raise with y'all, seems to me a very small minority of people to try to be basing a presidential campaign on. Am I right about that? Or is this a bigger body of folks than I think it is? Monica, let's start with you.
Jump
I
in.
was going to say, Baratunde has this one because, I think you were articulating what I was trying to think, much more sharply, that this is not a majority of Americans, it's not even a majority of the GOP, but it is, it's a minority that is intent on minority rule. Right. And so when you can, that's really what it's about, right? It's not winning the population, it's winning the election in those constrained terms that our electoral system is creating, where certain states have way more power, where your vote counts 100 times more when you're in one state than in another. And so what do you do with that? Do you play the same game, which I think people sometimes really get so desperate that they want to fight fire with fire. Or, Jim, I would put that question back to you. Is there a way to really mobilize a majority coalition of people who want things to be okay?
Yes. Well, I will respond because that's what this show has done a lot, and my Hightower Lowdown newsletter does every issue, and my radio commentaries and et cetera, and my speechifying and generally running my mouth is all about is that the American people are okay. And in fact, they are rebellious maverick fighters for little d democracy. They are not right-wingers, and they certainly are not corporatists. Which, by the way, is a theme that the right wing doesn't want to talk about. The Abbotts and DeSantis don't want to talk about that corporate power, but that's who they're actually serving. They're attempting to harness this right wing enthusiasm of a minority of people into the corporate agenda, and that agenda is indeed, as you were saying, Monica, a minority government. And it goes way back in history, of course, outside of the United States. But in our country, it goes back to John C. Calhoun, who actually advocated that workers, not only was slavery moral, but workers should not attempt to unionize. They should attempt to become slaves because they could be better taken care of in that capacity. And it was an agenda that the Koch brothers continue to push forward, that those with money and established presence in our society are better suited to govern than the riffraff.
Hightower, I want to jump in with a reader comment that is
good.
along the lines of things that things that we've been discussing this week is, the world burns. Grace Lynch, I'm going to put it up on screen, asks, how are the Democrats failing to stop the fascist tide? And what do they need to do to stop it? Anyone can answer this one. Just going to throw that in there.
Right.
Thanks,
Okay,
Grace.
cool. Thank you, Grace,
good.
for the easy question. I'm so glad that I came to this
Right.
chill happy hour vibe show. How are the Democrats going to stop the fascist tide? What do they need to do to stop it? I can't help but continue to think about this beautiful movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I highly recommend. And I will not fully spoil the film, but I will just say that there are multiple ways to fight, and our instincts are often not our best helpers. And so our instinct, as we were just talking about, is kind of to fight like they fight, and end up opposing with the same kind of energy frequency that's being thrown in our face. It's just the easiest thing. It's what our reflexes are optimized to do. Is kind of how we've been brought up. And so we fight extremism with extremism. They say it's us versus them. We say it's them versus us. They call us monsters. We call them monsters. And so we're both with stupid, at the extreme end of that pattern. And when I try to escape that vortex, which is very difficult, by the way, because I do believe many of these folks on the right are smarter than they appear to be, but they think the rest of us are stupid. I think there's a small minority, as we've discussed, who are very ill-intentioned and are not trying to serve the people from their position of government service, and really trying to extract from the people and obviously from the planet too. So how do we escape that? Because I don't want to impose liberal fascism, though I think it'd be tastier. It'd be organic, at least.
I'm sorry.
But
it'd be delicious.
Go back in the kitchen.
But I think, it's on now.
There you
That
go.
escalated in a hurry.
We got real up in happy hour here.
Right.
Yeah.
There's folks who are I hinted at it earlier with the Republicans not believing in themselves. There's folks who are just really, really afraid. And they've been encouraged to be afraid. So they have an emotional response to change, and that's fear and disdain and maybe even disgust. And then people come along and say, those are the right feelings to have. And here's who's to blame for those feelings. And it's never the people talking. It's always somebody else. And it's somebody probably in a weaker position. But that's the logic of it doesn't matter. The emotion of it is true. I'm afraid. You've just told me who to blame for my fear. I'm riled up. You've told me who to blame for my anger. And all I have to do to fix these feelings is whatever you say, and you'll make all the bad feels go away. Really, yes. Papa? Really, Mama? Okay. Where do I sign up? That sounds like a good deal. And it's dirty fuel. It's bad energy. It still powers
empty calories,
but it really blows a hole in the ozone, and it rips the planet apart, and it rips the soul of our country and of humanity apart at the extreme end of this. So are there other emotions we could play with? There are other desires that we share that we could say there's a path to getting. How do you want to feel? I know you're afraid. I know you don't like change. I don't like change either. I hate when they change my apps. I never asked for them to move these icons around like this. I remember signing up for firmware updates, but they come anyway. So what are we going to do? Well, I do like my phone being secure. You know, I do like having a job that pays well. I do like not having to worry that if I get sick, I'm going to lose everything I have. I do like being able to pay rent 6 months from now, knowing it's not going to go up 20% because the housing market's become a speculative venture for those with enough play money to play the game of housing. Now I'm a little riled up, but I'm also, oh yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. I don't like that either.
Yeah.
We share emotions, even if we don't share facts and language. What else do we have in common?
Yeah.
And I want to see Democrats speaking to emotions more and finding alternate emotions to unlock something else in people. And fear is totally understandable. I really don't like change. I'm not a special person who like embraces every new thing that comes to me. No. But if you tell me that there's something good for me on the other side of it, if you show me and prove to me that that is the case, then I will withstand some of that discomfort for the good stuff. Because I also work out and it's never fun. It's literally never fun.
I'm so glad
Never.
you're saying that, by the way, because I always, I never got runner's high. It always made me
Yeah. So there's a
mad.
handful of people.
Yeah.
There's
That's
a
a
handful
lie.
of freaks out there who just like love sweat.
Oh,
But most of us are just like, that's nasty. I want to feel good.
Yeah.
But we know that we can feel better if we temporarily, feel this other kind of way. And so
This
the
reminds
Democrats
me-
have not
Sorry.
been up to it,
Right.
in terms of responding to the moment. I think Democrats, along with the media in general, acting like we're back in some time where we had two legitimate political parties just having policy debates about which way the country should go. We have one. And they're barely up to the task.
Nah.
Other
Well-
ones not even playing the same game. So
It reminds me a
Sometimes.
little bit of a guy that we've been talking to over the past few months. This guy, an organizer out in Wisconsin, his name is Bill Hogseth, and he's been talking about doing rural organizing, and particularly in Wisconsin, which is a 91% white state. It's largely rural white people that they're organizing and talking to. And one of the things that he's reporting back is that the Democrats have not built relationships with people. They've abandoned many different classes of people in many ways, but they're also not naming the villain, where the Republicans are naming villains. They're saying the immigrants have come for your jobs. Women are too uppity. Black folk also kind of
too uppity. Yeah.
Too
Yeah.
uppity.
We have that in common. Yeah.
That's why we've always been friends. But what Democrats don't do is name the actual villain. This company that extracted all of the resources from your town and left you with very poor health and all of these different things, they are the villain. That is the villain. But Democrats are unwilling to do that. And Hightower, that's something that, you have been preaching for years, that the Democrats, like, when are they going to get on board with naming the villain?
Well, some people say we need a third party. I think we need a second one.
Boom.
But because we're talking about Democrats, there's the Democratic Party establishment, and then there are Democrats, little d Democrats, all across America, the vast majority. And what really unites them, in my experience, is the sense of the common good. That has never gone away from our country. Not just a matter of polls, but of elections and actions. And so I direct it to both of you, because you're in contact with such efforts across there. But Baratunde, with your How to Citizen campaign, and you, Monika, with all your journalistic work and your network all across the country, of so much good is happening in America. So much that has little d democratic clarity to it. What Deanna's talking about, the corporate elites running roughshod over not just poor people, not just black people, not just Mexican American, Latinos, not just women. Everybody, anybody who gets in their way, they've become a superpower center. And the old-time populist movement, indeed the very founding of this country, and the whole issue of slavery and suffrage and et cetera, all came down to this fundamental question, fundamental point. Too few people control too much of the money and power, and they're using that money and power to get more from us, and that's the big fight. And I think we need to have a politics that is directed to that. Jesse Jackson said we might not all have come over, but we're all on the same boat. Might not all have come over on the same boat, but we're in the same boat now. That is a powerful political reality, and I've used that line. I've seen Jesse Jackson use that line, and people nod. People who might not, be going to supper together after the event, and that's a powerful political tool, and that is what I think our hope is. And both of y'all are in touch with various grassroots movements all across the country that are practicing that every single day. Speak to it a little bit, Monika.
Well, the thing that, this made me think of is how desperately people really do need to stay hopeful. And I think one of the ways that you do that is by thinking about how the arc of progress is not unimpeded. And, that we forget that America has barely been a democracy in the first place, that up until the Voting Rights Act, and up until the 19th Amendment, this was not a country where most people had any sort of say. And that, we've had periods. I was just reading manuscript that my coworker, David Korn, who's our Washington bureau chief, has a new book out in the fall that's basically about how the Republican Party got this way. So it's kind of an historical investigation, which is a fun task for an investigative reporter. And the case that he makes is that's always been there. It's not always been there are these struggles between these extremist forces and, more small d democratic forces that have been there the whole time, that, at certain, maybe during certain parts of particularly the last 30 or 40 years, it was a little easier, especially for, white, well-situated folks to think everything is, kind of on a good track, but it was a struggle all this time. And so people, at the grassroots and on the front lines have been working to push the country more in the direction of democracy for a long, long time. And, and that is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're not in this unique moment where we have these forces clashing right now. They were clashing in 1920 and in the 50s and etc. Sorry, I see Baratunde nodding, so I'm curious what you're thinking.
I'm thinking that the sun is redesigning my shirt for me, and I have this sun dappled look now, which was not the plan.
That is actually really awesome looking.
But my curtain
it's a good look.
It fell down the other day, and I have not had the time to reattach it because democracy is also falling down, and I'm focused on restoring that before my curtain.
Boom! Poetry.
I'm here for all week, folks. Thank you for naming that, Monika. It's a line that it's resonated with me, and I've felt and echoed in my own way, which is like, we claim to be this old democracy, this longest running democracy, but for who? Yeah. And for most of our history, most of our people couldn't participate. So was it? So is this who we are? It is who we have been. It is who we feel like we are right now. It is not who we have to be. And I take some hope from the reminder that America is like this amendable thing. It's an editable, Google Doc of a nation. Like, our Constitution could be changed. We've added folks to the category of white people. Irish folks didn't used to be white. Right. Irish people is white now. Like, America could change, right? Yeah. Women can vote and mostly own property. Like, it's things can get different. Yeah. And there's some fun stuff happening out there, even right now in the midst of the moment where it feels like we're just losing everything. Amazon workers organizing, unionizing, Starbucks workers, now Apple workers. Right. I mean, that's a great sign. I visited a regenerative ocean farm in Hartford, Connecticut earlier this year. The group's called Project Green Wave. And I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Put them on some show, the outdoor show, the citizen show, just the Hightower lowdown right now. This is the immediate debut. But it's run by a very working class, bearded white dude who looks like he'd be the subject of a New York Times feature on like Trump voters and how they feel right now. Like that's just, you know, this kind of that whole like dedicated section of the paper that's just like, how the Trump voter feeling right now? Who they mad at now? Let's check in. He has that kind of a face. He has like, I'm a mad Trump voter kind of a face, but he's not. He's just a dude, you know, and he didn't really like arugula either, but he's into regenerative ocean farming because he likes having a job. And he's a former fisherman. He stopped being a seafaring fisherman because we ate all the fish. Yeah, we overfished it. And so I didn't leave him with much to do. So we started growing kelp and seaweed and oysters and mussels. And he took me out there in the middle of February. It's ice cold. The best oysters I ever had in my life. And these oysters, the way they're laid out there, they're filtering the water. They're dampening the storm surges, helping protect Hartford. They've got manufacturing come from canning all this stuff and using the shells to build things. And it is becoming this ecosystem of purpose and labor and this multiracial coalition of folks who are invested in their communities again. And he brought me over to this other spot, this woman who created Community Solutions. I can't remember her name now, but I got to shout out this organization. That stuff's happening. Yeah. There's beautiful activity going on. There's people who remember not just who we are, but who remember who we can be, which is always what's kind of dragged us forward in the muck of this place. And also what makes it kind of a beautiful, we're a beautiful mess. This country's a mess. But we've always been a mess. That's America. That's what we do. We're a mess. We're a hot mess. And we're a beautiful mess. When we get our shit together
Texas right now,
when we get it together, we're capable of amazing things. And I want to hear people telling this story of like, instead of the scarcity story, are we going to lose all this? Someone's going to take this from you. You're going to lose all that. Imagine how much more we could have. You're so proud you went to the moon one time.
Yeah.
We could have been to Mars by now if you let women have bank accounts before like 1960. There's more money in the system for us to leverage and build together and combine and remix. And not just the money, but the ideas and the cultures and the food. All the food could be so much better. It's already pretty good though.
Much better.
But it could be so much better.
It's so much better. I do want to shout out in this call out to who is doing good. I do have to make a plug. HightowerLowdown.org. Our newest issue of the Hightower Lowdown is up online already. And you can read more about Abbott, DeSantis, and the extremity of the GOP. But there are some great and we got some Mother Jones. Well, I'll put that URL up on.
Not yet in your mailbox.
We always have every single month. We have a do something box in the print issue and online. And there are great groups in here, particularly in Florida and Texas, where you talk about like, oh, let Texas secede, drop Florida off. There are good people in these states doing the hard work. So please go to hightowerlowdown.org. Check out the do something box, learn about those people, support them, and show them up. And Monica, tell us about your next issue of Mother Jones.
Well, this particular issue, which I always lose track because we send it off to the printer and then we don't see it again. But this is the one that maybe even more apropos tomorrow.
Pardon me while I drink.
This is actually vodka here. That's sort of back to, that is, outlawing abortion in all cases is not a majoritarian position. And so, back to where we started, anti-majoritarian things have happened a lot in this country, and it's taken a lot of work by a lot of people over long time frames to sort of push them back. So I'm thinking, like this, the constitutional right to choose what happens with your own body might be gone tomorrow. But
literally,
maybe, but then, is it gone forever? I mean, can we stop there? And do we not have to look at, a 20 or 30 year time frame of what happens next? Because if we don't.
Yes, of course. And that's what America has been. That is the progress that we have had is exactly what you're saying there, because we've been knocked down all the time. We get knocked down, but we get up again. get
we
up
get
again,
that,
or
sorry.
find our way around
Go
the
to
back.
song.
We come around the back door. We go over. We go under. People figure it out, and that's the great hope that I have, and the great faith that I have, and the lucky experiences that I've been able to have in my life are of people who are doing exactly that, and I. The people who are fighting environmental justice movements are not the people in the big Washington organizations. They're the people in St. John's Parish, Louisiana. They're the people down on Matagorda Bay in Texas. They're the poorest
Yep.
people, the least organized, the least likely, and they come through. And that is our hope. And that is what I think our mission has to be, of people like both of you and Deanna and myself, is that we have to encourage that. We can't do it, but they can. And we foster that as the guiding ethic of American democracy, then we're going to get somewhere.
I'm reminded, Hightower, as we start to close down. I see that we're running up on time here, but I'm reminded of that line that you shared. I think it's in at least one of your books, but from the hardware store there in Austin.
Oh yeah,
Of the sign hanging up. What did it say?
Yeah, well, it was a little store called Harold's Hardware, and it's just a little store. It wasn't one of these chain things. And you could get anything there. They would sell you one nail, and that's what you needed. And they would help you figure it out. Let's pencil out here what you're trying to build, and let's figure it out. And they would loan you a tool. You could take a power tool home and use it and bring it back. And the slogan at Harold's Hardware is, "Together we can do it yourself."
Yes. That's the whole thing right there. That's the whole thing.
Right. Thank you, Deanna, for remembering.
Yeah. So I want to give everybody a chance to.
Yes.
We obviously shamelessly plug the Lowdown. Should you choose to get almost weekly emails from us, Hightower. You can go here to sign up, hightowerlowdown.org/email. Baratunde, tell us what's next for you, and where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yes, what is America Outdoors?
I'm on the internet wherever Baratunde is found. That's me. And America Outdoors is my public television series launching July 5th on a PBS station near you, and also on the internet. So the PBS app, it's pbs.org/America Outdoors. Free, no emails, no credit cards, no personal data harvesting. You already paid for it. It's the People's Network. So this is a show I made with Twin Cities Public Television and a production company out of Brooklyn called Part 2 Pictures. 6 episodes. I explore this country, a diverse set of people who have a deep relationship with the outdoors. And it's not the cast of outdoor characters we're used to seeing. It's not just like grizzly white dudes conquering stuff with long sticks on a big rock somewhere. We have a couple of those. You got to have, there's a quota, for white dudes with sticks in the show, but also we have indigenous people, 3 different indigenous nations represented in the show. I go surfing with like 30 Black people. It's Wakanda on the waves. I visit regenerative farms in Appalachia and northern Minnesota. I go on a rice harvest, a Manuman harvest with the Anishinaabe Ojibwe folks up north there. I go whitewater rafting with a paralyzed man down the New River in Appalachia. And I think, I could plug a lot of different elements of this show, including my visit to the Great Dismal Swamp, which ain't so dismal. It's the slave economy around it that was dismal and made it home to 50,000 Maroons fleeing that brutal, torture chamber of a free country so that I could still be here. But I'll focus and close on this like Appalachia piece, because I visited, spent a week there, and I'm hanging out with former coal miners who started a beekeeping collective, hanging out with this, paralyzed man from the chest down who started a whole company of adaptive water sports to make sure the outdoors are accessible to everybody of every ability. And he's way better at whitewater rafting than I am. I visited this regenerative farm, had the best meal of the summer 2021 at a random farmhouse in Appalachia. And when I think about what the story of Appalachia that I hear, it's like opioids and whatever Joe Manchin's up to.
Yeah.
And neither of those are satisfying stories. And neither of those are healthy diets for understanding what's going on in Appalachia. But I feel like Joe Manchin's version of Appalachia is limited. He lacks imagination. he, like the Republican Party we were talking about earlier, lacks a belief in his own people, and he can't see what they're capable of. I saw Appalachia in a week what he refuses to acknowledge. So many of them moved on from his little patriarchal idea of what real Appalachia is. He can't recognize the innovation. He can't recognize the fusion. He can't recognize the dope pizza that's there because he's stuck in this old view of what his own people are capable of. And it makes me sad for him, not for Appalachia. I'm like, oh, poor Joe Manchin has no idea what his own people are capable of. So this show let me see stuff like that while rafting and hiking and surfing. Check it out.
You should know that I have seen Joe Manchin's personal habitat in Washington, D.C. He lives on a yacht. He lives on a yacht in the Potomac Basin and has a supercar to drive him 1 block to the Capitol from there. So that's his world.
Representing real Appalachia. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
I love that so much, Baratunde, that you're doing this outdoors show, because that also goes to like these connective tissues between people that you wouldn't think had connections between them.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Thank you.
And I will shamelessly plug Mother Jones, you know, on every channel that you choose to find it, on TikTok, on Instagram, you know, in print.
TikTok. Y'all are on TikTok?
The Mother Jones TikTok channel is really fun. Highly recommended.
Smash the follow button.
Smash it. And you know, democracy is what we do. That's all that our reporting is about at this point. Both people working for it and people, you know, exposing people who work against it. It touches all the other stories. Climate is about democracy. Racial justice is, you know, democracy squared. And if you want to see that reporting and not go to the trouble of going to TikTok and signing up, or to motherjones.com, subscribe to our newsletter, which is also free and comes to you as often as you want it, but, you know, for sure 5 days a week. And every once in a while, I'll jump in there and send you an email too. I just got to say, it's so cool that we actually have, this is an all journalism show. You know, these are all people who have committed journalism.
Committed like it's a crime. Yeah. I love that. Yes, Your Honor, I have committed acts of journalism. Yeah, right. I acknowledge it.
Well, when I first ran for office, I acknowledged that I was editor of the Texas Observer at the time, and ran for office. Said I was making the only downward career move you could make from journalism, which was to go into politics. So yes, we're all guilty, but we're all proud. Too, because fundamentally it's about organizing. That's what it is. You know, whatever tool you got, whatever mouth you've got, whatever mind you've got, talent, skill, put that to work. And humor. Baratunde is not the only one to count on for humor. You got to count on your own. Turn that little sucker loose, whatever size it is, unleash it, and talk to people. Because that's the future right there. If we just talk to people honestly, and they will talk to us honestly, then we can build something that is truly historic.
And as the wise purveyors of Harold's hardware taught us, together we can do it yourself.
That's it. Thank you, Monika. Thank you, Baratunde. Thank you. All of y'all for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the old Chat and Chew happy hour here tonight. And we will be back with you with another extravaganza of some sort. We don't know what that is yet. If necessary, we will invent it, but it won't be necessary because it just keeps happening all across America, and we'll bring it to you and you to it. Thanks a bunch for being with us. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Howdy ho, folks. Howdy ho. Howdy ho, America, and points be